Today we are making holiday card prints and we are using the Styrofoam printmaking lesson. So step 1 is to create 2 holiday designs on your practice sketch paper and star the one that you want for your final, and I'll tape your foam board to the back of your paper so that you're ready for next week. So getting my paper, I'm going to write my name, my grade, and my teacher name, so your homeroom teacher name, so that we make sure we know who this card belongs to, who the sketch paper belongs to, and we don't lose it. Then you just start filling out your sketch boxes. Make sure you fill up the entire box. You want to fill your format, so make sure you take up all the space on your paper. I made these boxes the same size as what your Styrofoam board is going to be, so we'll just tape it on the back whenever we're ready to get started. So fill up the entire space. I ended up trying to freehand a circle and then deciding to just use my tape as the circle. It made a lot more sense. So I'm going to make a snow globe on this side, and I'm just going to fill it in with this cute little gingerbread house, and this will be my design for this side of the paper. But I do want to make sure I fill in the entire thing so it looks nice and finished. So I'm going to add a few little stars to the outside of my artwork and make it look like it's sitting on a table just to fill in my whole space. But I'm going to star that one, and now we're going to move on to step 2, which is to tape your foam plate underneath your chosen sketch. And I'll do this for you so that next week when you come back you can get started. Now I'm going to take my foam board and some masking tape so it doesn't rip my paper and try to match it up with the correct rectangle. And you can see how it can lift up and down. You're going to need that later, but we're going to tape this bottom piece down as well so that it doesn't wiggle or move. So now we're ready for step 3, which is to use a colored pen to trace over your whole design, pushing it into your foam plate through your sketch paper. Just be careful not to push too hard. We don't want to poke a hole through that foam board. And I'm left-handed, so I have to start on the right side so that my hand doesn't get ink all over it. So let's try and listen to what that's going to sound like. It actually sounds really cool, and some of my kids even said it's very satisfying. But you're going to go around the entire design, and the reason you use a colorful pen is so that you can see where you've already outlined, so you don't do it more than once or you don't miss any spots. And then once you're done with your entire design, we're going to move on to step 4. Step 4 is to drop your foam plate down by one piece of tape and deepen the indentions directly onto your foam plate. And once again, try very hard not to push through the design and poke a hole through your styrofoam. So we're just going to lift up one side like we did earlier, and you can kind of see where my design is, but I need to go through it one more time. I need to indention one more time. So this will be the last step before you get to print. But you can see how here you'll know when you're done, when your entire design is in pen. We want to think about different line thicknesses, so some of your lines can be really thin, and then others can be a little thick, to just kind of give it some more interest in your design. I had my students stick it back to their paper and save it for the next week, so we didn't lose their styrofoam plate. This is what it should look like when you're done. It should have the complete styrofoam outlined with pen. And now we're going to move on to step 5, which is printing your design. So first you have to choose an ink color. If you choose a dark ink, you're going to want a lighter paper. If you choose a lighter ink, you're going to need a darker paper. And so let's talk about what's going to be in your printing area. Right here is all of the different supplies that I use with my students' printmaking. But most importantly, you're going to have a pressing area and a printing area, and those two areas need to be different. The printing area is going to be very messy. The pressing area is what you want to be clean. So as far as printmaking supplies go, at the top left is a Brayer to help us press down our paper onto our plate, a Brayer, which is also called a roller, to roll on your ink, and then the actual ink that's on the top right. I'm going to take my finished styrofoam plate and I'm going to make sure to put it on the right side. So the left side is what we're going to use to press down our paper with this Brayer. I'm going to use that later. And this side is going to be the printing side. This is going to be the messy side. You might have a squeeze bottle of this type of ink. I have Speedball, but there are plenty other brands that work. You would squirt just like a dollop onto your little inking area, but I'm going to use this Speedball brand container. I think this is either the 8 ounce or the 16 ounce. And I'm going to use a little piece of cardboard to scoop out a dollop and put it on my plate, on my printing area. So I'll show you what that scoop looks like. It's about that much in the corner, a dollop, and I'm going to slide it onto my printing area and then stick that cardboard back in there so it doesn't get messy or anywhere else, and move that off to the side. So now I'm going to grab my roller or my Brayer, and make sure that anytime you set this down, you set it down upside down so that the ink doesn't get all over the paper. Now let's listen for what this part should sound like. Alright, so I usually tell my students that they're looking for the texture of like an orange peel, and we don't want there to be too much ink, but also not enough ink. So now we're going to go and do the magic part, which is rolling our ink onto our styrofoam plate, and we want to make sure that we cover it evenly, so we're going to go in all different directions. So not only am I going to go upside down, but I'm also going to go side to side and diagonal to make sure I covered it the entire thing. Now I can ink this styrofoam plate a couple of times, so I might do it 2 or 3 times to make sure I have a nice even coverage, but it's very important not to over ink it. So let's take our styrofoam plate and move it from the printing area to the pressing area. So we want to look at that really nice coverage. It's a nice even layer. Now that it's in the pressing area, I'm going to have 2 different types of paper. The first print you're going to do is with white paper, and then the second one you're going to do is going to be with whatever scrapbook paper you would like to use. But I would like the first one to be with just plain white paper so you can see how it turns out before you start using our scrapbook paper. So I'm going to grab this white sheet of paper, and I'm going to try and put it as close as I can to the middle. This one is not going to be perfectly in the middle, but that's okay. And I'm going to take my Brayer and I'm going to rub it around in small circles. Now, keep an eye on the fact that my hand is always on the design. So either way where I move it, I always have a hand that's holding the design down so it doesn't come off. So let's make sure there's not anything that needs to be repressed. And I see a little bit here that I could probably press over. Be very careful when you're lifting it up though, because if you move it slightly, it's going to mess up your design. So now I'm going to pull it off, and I've got my first print. This is the first print. Keep in mind, everything you print is going to be in reverse. So you don't want to write any words, because if you did print them, they would be backwards. Now this is my first print. We're going to go ahead and move on to the second print. I'm not going to add any more ink. I'm just going to roll my Brayer over the ink one more time, and then I'll reprint this design. So let's move it back to the printing area, and it did leave a little mess on this side, but that's okay. So re-rolling it in every direction, re-rolling it, re-inking it, putting it down. Let's move it back to the pressing area. And this time I'm going to grab a scrapbook piece of paper. Now I've cut these a little smaller, so they'll be a little bit larger than your styrofoam plate. So I'm going to grab it and make sure to use the colorful side. So I'm going to make sure that the pink is the part that is touching the ink. Everything we scratched out is going to be the white part, or whatever color paper it is. And the ink is going to catch all of the other parts of your styrofoam that are raised. Okay, so the indentions are what is going to show up as your design. That's why it was so important to fill our entire paper. So you can see how this time my arm is moving around the paper. I always have a hand on my Brayer and a hand on my artwork so that it doesn't disconnect or move around or wiggle and mess up your print. So let's pull this one, and this will be the last print you do for today. We'll put all of our ink papers. Oh, look how nice and gorgeous that looks. It's a little off, it's not in the center, but that's fine. So now let's wash our printing plates in the sink if you want to keep them, or if you don't want to keep them, you can throw them away. And just make sure your area is nice and neat so that someone else can take your spot. This is the art rubric that I always use to grade different projects that we do. And I can't wait to see your designs. Have fun.